I mentioned earlier we were going to have somebody dropping by this morning from the Boy Scouts and Brett Belknap, right? I got that right? Let me, first of all, you turn Brett's microphone on. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
See, I was not prepared. Uh, Take off on a motto that some people might be familiar with. So, anyway, thank you for coming by this morning.
You're welcome.
We wanted to talk a little bit about scouting, and I was just telling you off air, this got started. I had a conversation with Carl Corbin about this, and of course, Carl pointing out to me that we haven't gone anywhere when it comes to scouting, and he's been involved for quite some time, obviously with local troops himself.
Yes, he
and
has.
so he said, I think I can arrange this, and we can get somebody on the air. Um, but you've gone through somewhat of a reorganization, and I think that a lot of people, especially since you lost so many affiliations just because of the departure of the LDS Church, there was an assumption that scouting just went away from the Magic Valley, but it's not true.
That is correct. It is not true. It is alive and just right now very vibrant. We have a lot of people involved. We've made some major changes so that we can better serve the youth in the Magic Valley, and it's just gangbusters. I'm a volunteer. I'm the council president, and between scouting and my real job, I am staying very busy with scouting.
When you mentioned the council, because there has been somewhat of a merger between Oregon and Idaho, but you still have a local council that's operating, I guess, out of Twin Falls. Then
Correct. What happened is when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints decided to end their relationship with scouting, that changed our dynamics here in the Snake River Council, and we went from close to 3,000 youth down to about 450 youth. So that required that we relook at our council and how we're going to operate. Do we sell properties so that we're financially stable? Do we merge with another council? And so we explored these options for about a year, and our board decided the best route was to merge with the Ore-Ida Council in Boise, because they went from a large number down to about only 2,000 youth from almost 10,000 youth. And so this on March 1st, it became official that we merged with the Ore-Ida Council and formed a new council called the Mountain West Council. And we still have our office here in Twin Falls, and it will stay here in Twin Falls and be staffed and be able to serve the youth of the Magic Valley there.
yeah, that's a nice building and it's a modern building, and but where it is, I mean, where it's located, uh, you know, it might be in a situation where it wouldn't be an easy building to turn around and even sell to somebody else because it's a type of building that you would see along Blue Lakes Boulevard, but where it's currently at, it really only seems to have one use.
Well, we have had out offers, people expressing interest because of the homes that are being built there,
Nice
and
piece of property.
the opportunity for maybe a retail store there of some type, a gas station or something like that. But we're keeping the building. We're not selling anything. It's business as usual. As a matter of fact, we're growing in our scouting council here in the Twin Falls area, and it's an exciting time to be in scouting right now. Very exciting.
Because it's been such a roller coaster ride. And lots of criticisms over the last few years and other things that have gone on. But I think the experience still for and anybody who went through scouting as a kid likely says, I learned a great deal there that did help me out later in life. And it's not, we're not just talking about tying knots and survival skills, but there's leadership skills that you get through it that and let's be honest, they're not getting this in a lot of other parts of their life.
They're not getting those skills, and they're not being able to explore what they might want to do in their future. And they get to do that through earning merit badges and learning skills and leadership and the time honored values of scouting, whether the program's there or not, do not go away. Your duty to God and country and to your fellow men just don't go away. And the values in the scout law, they don't go away. And those are the things that we need today in our society is young men and young women who will learn and live those time honored values, and contribute to society as opposed to be a detriment to society.
Yeah, we've heard some people, they've criticized. There, obviously, like in any organization, there were some people in leadership who shouldn't have been there. But you see that in schools, you see that in sports.
We're human.
When I remember growing up as a boy in my hometown, no bigger than like Kimberly, small town, smaller than that actually. And the scoutmaster for years had been a fellow who'd been he'd been shot off a motorcycle in World War II while he was in Europe, and yet managed to get up and got patched up, and he came home and he worked for 40 years in a job, and then devoted all his spare time to scouting after that. And he founded what they used to that the local lake would freeze in winter, freeze solidly,
Yeah.
by the way, and they would have an ice camp out year after year, and that still exists to this day, even though he's been dead probably close to 15 years. That is a legacy that he left behind, and just his backstory though, and what he meant to people, and then what he created. Those are the types of things that I think people draw inspiration from, young people especially.
The young people do. They look up. Being a parent of 7, my kids listen to other people a lot better than they listen to me, and so I am grateful for good scout leaders that were an influence for for my boys, my 3 boys, that taught them things that, hey, Dad doesn't know anything, but this person over here does, and so I'm forever grateful for those. You spoke of leadership. Um, Scouting was a big factor in my middle son, who is in the Air Force, and went to basic training down in San Antonio. And out of 758 kids, he was the #1 airman in his graduating class.
Hold those thoughts for a moment. We've got more coming up with Brett Belknap from the Boy Scouts in just a couple of minutes. We're at 9:40. It's 49. Bill Colley with you too on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Brett Belknap joining us this morning from the Boy Scouts. It's still Boy Scouts of America, right? We still
Scouts of America.
Okay.
Boy has been removed because of the addition of letting the younger age girls.
But we got to mention they're not necessarily together. I mean,
no,
these are separate programs under one roof, basically.
Correct.
There was a lot of confusion about that.
There has been. The girls have completely separate troops. They don't mix and mingle. The only time that the boys and the girls would be together would be for an opening flag ceremony. Other than that, they are completely separate units with separate leadership, female leadership for the girls, and male and leadership for the boys. But they are separate. They do not mix and mingle. They have to have their own scoutmaster, everything. So they are as separate can be.
Wanted to mention telephone number for reaching us today, 208-736-0300. And of course, Bill Colley with you too on Magic Valley this morning on KLIX. And we're at 50 at 9:45. Caller, you're on the air. You want to grab the headset, Brett? We can take the call. Go ahead.
Yes, Bill. I was wondering, does Boy Scouts still have the fundraiser trap sheet at Murtaugh Lake?
We have not done that for a while. With this new merger and now becoming the Mountain West Council, we are sitting down because the resources that we've brought together with the other council and mixed with ours, we are just starting fresh and anew and looking for different fundraisers, things that worked over in the Ojai Council. Would they work here? Things that worked here, would they work over there? And so we're going to reapproach all of our fundraisers other than popcorn. Popcorn is staying, but we are working on all the other ones. That's a great idea.
Yeah, well, that was a wonderful fundraiser, and men, women, boys, girls, everybody seemed to have a wonderful time, and
we
would like to see that started up again.
They had one planned over in the Ojai Council before the merger, and so that one is going to happen this summer. But we haven't, in our process of examining what to do with the Snake River Council and how to make it so it serves the youth, we kind of just put everything on hold until we got organized. And as of March 1st, that merger was official, signed with the state, with national. So we are now the Mountain West Council. So now we'll proceed to look at different fundraisers and different events.
Want to thank the caller. I have a question. Of course, this comes up, I'm sure, a lot too. This came in on the app, and the writer is from Kimberly, and says, what's the position on the LGBTQ community, as well as, are you still promoting a biblical culture?
That's a great question. And if you ever hear the Scout motto, the first thing is we do our duty to God, and that's the very first thing that we do.
Mhm.
And God is first and foremost in scouting, and that's how Baden Powell felt about it, and that's how we still do that. Whether or not your orientation, we're not going to discriminate against that, because we're going to ask you, and when you join scouting, to live a set of values. And if you're willing to live those set of values of honoring God and your country and your fellow men, and the Scout law, then you're more than welcome to join.
Well, I was telling you off air about a friend of mine who's a vice commodore, which, I mean, I don't even know what that means, but I know that's a big position in scouting. And he's back on the East Coast. He had to leave scouting in 1985 because of his own orientation. He was my lawyer for many, many years. And then he's back now working with scouting. But he's not the type of individual that would be preying on anybody. He's just not in his nature. And he still believes in God, and it's a flag waving American,
Yeah.
and so I guess the point that the writer is pointing out is just asking, are we ensuring that the kids are going to be safe? And of course, that's the big question.
That scouting is one of the most safe organizations in the United States for youth. We have very little incidents currently with anything with people preying on kids, because we take youth protection so seriously. It is a multi-layered process to
The
become
background
protected.
checks go on much more.
Background checks, the trainings, the emphasis. We are constantly talking about youth protection, and no youth left alone with an adult. There's always too deep leadership, and with that focus and attention, we have become one of the safest organizations for youth to participate in the country.
I was going to say, when I was growing up as a kid, our scoutmaster, Bob Frazier was his name, and I mentioned earlier he was a wonderful man. He was replaced later on by an individual who did serve prison time because of his actions with a child, and there may have been more, but he had the conviction that sent him to prison, and it really rattled my small town. I was already had grown up, moved away, and I remember sitting in the newsroom one day where I was working in Syracuse, New York, and just looking at the AP wire and saying, I know who that man is. Those things, obviously, as we pointed out, you had these problems in schools, you had these problems in churches,
Everywhere.
and a lot of it was we didn't think about it much in those days, because if you wanted to be a little league coach, you volunteered your time. They were glad that you volunteered your time to do it. But we didn't have strenuous background checks on people in that era. And you hate to say that we had to do it, but you did, and so with that, my guess is most of the people who are coming through the program now and ended up as in leadership roles have been pretty heavily vetted.
They have, with background checks, youth protection. They have to recertify every 2 years, and it's a very inclusive, timely process to do that. And the other thing that makes scouting even more safe for youth is now with that we can have young girls and have girls in there. It's a family-oriented organization, so mom and dad can become involved in scouting with their families, and that provides an extra layer of protection. When dad is a scoutmaster and has boys in there, mom's working in the Cub Scouts, and their boys and girls are all in scouting, that adds an extra layer of protection because of how it's become such a family-oriented organization.
Well, and again, you mentioned the growth. Has that actually helped bring the numbers up?
We have not in the Magic Valley experienced a lot of growth with the young women. Initially, there was a few. We currently do not have any units, young women units.
I guess they'd rather
here.
be selling cookies outside Walmart instead.
Well,
with the competition.
Having 4 daughters, when they get to that age, they have a lot of other things. Hunting and fishing and camping and shooting guns is all fun the first time, but then after that, they've had enough.
Well, and this challenge, you mentioned all the things that kids now have that they can do. When I was growing up, you could play Little League, or you could play Pop Warner football, or you could be in scouting. There really wasn't much else that was going on. And we didn't have video games. You had 3 TV channels at best. And so scouting was an escape. I can still remember one of my uncles who was a scout leader for decades. cleaning up an old cemetery. And, I was in Cubs at the time, but I can remember we were told we were going to help clean up the cemetery. We got dropped off there by my dad. I walked down the hill, and there's my uncle in charge, which, by the way, you think that you'd get away with more that way. It was a
No.
rough day for me. But those were the type, but you enjoyed it because you were with friends and you got a sense of accomplishment out of all of it. And the challenge is now trying to find out how to convince young people if that this experience they'll actually walk away from it and say, gee, that was fun, or that I feel better about doing it, because they've got so many distractions that they're dealing with.
They do, and it's amazing what happens to them when you get them up at a camp where the cell phone doesn't work, and they don't have all the distractions, and they focus on good old-fashioned fun like you and I had when we were younger. And once they experience that and find out that they can do things, and once parents understand that, I've had a lot of parents that said, "Oh, my son can't go camping. He can't do this. He doesn't like to get dirty, or he doesn't like this." And you get them up there, and they become the dirtiest kid in the whole camp because they cut loose, and it's just a great opportunity. It's the science station for life that a young person can come into scouting and explore through the merit badge program all kinds of possibilities that they could do in their future life. And so it's a big, huge science lab for the youth.
There's still, when it comes to merit badges too, there's some standard ones that obviously people earn, but people can be a little creative too about what they pursue.
Yeah, and there's 124 merit badges. We just had a couple of boys in Boise get all the merit badges, which was really cool. We just had a record year with Eagle Scouts in the Snake River Council and in the Ore-Ida Council with all the Eagle Scouts. We had close to 460 Eagle Scouts just in the month of December. And think about all the service projects that those young men did to help the community. And that's another reason why scouting is such a valuable asset, is just think of we would be amazed at the man hours and the dollars that these young people have given in Eagle projects to the community over
Right.
the years.
And I
Just
think
phenomenal.
I've been critical sometimes of some of the decisions that have been made and the like, but overall, my guess is, and from what I witness, it's still better for the kids to go through scouting than not go through scouting. Um, from a character standpoint, that they're going to be better off by doing it, other than just hanging around in the basement playing video games with friends.
Well, they get the opportunity to lead. And every scouting unit is a boy-led troop, a youth-led troop. The scoutmaster is just an advisor. The best scoutmaster that I ever heard of was one that when they went camping, the last thing that was packed was his big, nice reclining chair, and the first thing unpacked was his big, nice reclining chair. And he just put his chair in there, and then when they got to camp, he got his chair out and sat down and let the senior patrol leader and the assistant patrol leader and let the youth run the program and set things up. And that's where the value is in teaching leadership, which we need today.
And one of the first experiences I had was scouting in Twin Falls. I remember walking to Fred Meyer one day, and there was a young man. He was collecting toiletries and toothpaste and the like, and he was collecting all of these things. And he just asked that if you pick up something in the store, you bring it back, you contribute, because I think he was going to, it may have been Guatemala, but he was going somewhere where they have a lack of these things. And that's that call to altruism is still there.
Yes.
If the scout wants to turn it into that, that's what it really comes down to. If that's what the scout wants to pursue, the opportunity is there.
That's his project, and there's a lot of hours that go into planning that. And it's not his mom's project, it's not the scout leader's project. That's his project, to organize, to involve the other kids in his troop, and to figure it out with guidance from a scout leader. You can think of the scout leader just as a coach. Hey, here's a play. Here's what you can do. Go run it. If you need to adapt. But to guide and counsel, and it teaches these young people how to lead, how to analyze, how to figure a problem out and see if there is a solution. And 9 times out of 10, the solution that they came up that they think they're going to get is not what it is once they get that experience of going through and problem solving and leading. And so it's such a valuable program. It has been that in my sons' lives, my three boys. I mentioned my son in the Air Force. He called me from basic training and said, "Dad, this is simple stuff. I learned all this stuff in scouting." And I was pleasantly surprised when we went to his graduation and he was the top airman. Um, uh, it's just amazing the values that it teaches, and the leadership and the critical thinking is what's missing today, and it teaches that critical thinking.
I want to thank you for coming by, and Brett came by at so much short notice.
I heard you on the radio say that you didn't have a confirmation, and so I am here to just share with everybody the how great scouting is, and I am so excited for the changes, for the new council and the opportunities of growth. The people that initially said, okay, when the church left, that they were going to be done with it, that they're now coming back and wanting to be involved as leaders, wanting to be involved as youth. It's just a great program.
We want to thank Brett Belknap for dropping by today. And we do want to point out we've got the Rush Limbaugh program coming up next. And God willing, if the creek don't rise, I'll be back here tomorrow morning between 6 and 10 a.m. on Magic Valley This Morning. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.